I'd like to welcome everyone to this joint webinar by Telenor IoT and Accenture on the topic of urban mobility and the role that IoT will play. My name is Galina Garpensto, and I'm a manager at Accenture, working with clients within telecom, media, and the high-tech space. And together with me here, I have Martin Whitlock, the CTO at Telenor IoT, and Bengt Nordström, Managing Director at Accenture Sweden, who will together discuss the recent IoT prediction report that Accenture and Telenor IoT have published. So this will be a 30-minute webinar, during which we'll have a discussion that I'm going to moderate between the two of you. And that will take about 25 minutes, and we'll reserve the last 5 minutes in the end for a Q&A session. So for all of you that are joining us online, please feel free to post your questions in the chat at any time during the discussions, and we will address those in the end. So let's then get started. This prediction report is part of a series now that we have done for the past 5 years. And there have been quite a variety of topics that we've covered, from the connected economy to supply chain, sustainability, and now urban mobility. So my first question to you, Martin, is what made you choose specifically the topic of urban mobility for this report?
Yeah, good question. I guess that part of the reason is that mobility and urban mobility is something that concerns us all, at least those of us living in an urban environment. So that's a good start. Then mobility and transportation as a concept, I think, is something that has been having growing expectation upon itself to keep up with increased demand since the early days of industrialization, and that continues, obviously. We are getting more and more people, and everybody needs to get to and from work, at least when it's not pandemic. So that's one of the reasons. But I also think that there are a few macro trends going on right now that has the possibility to maybe impact and challenge the way that we see transportation services and the way we have been using them for the last couple of decades. So that includes, of course, as I mentioned, continued increased population in urban areas. And then on top of that, we have things like sustainability goals, where requirements of reducing carbon footprints and to a large extent share transportations and managing that in an efficient way, a sustainable way, comes upon us all. We have a situation now where energy prices and the global economy have taken turns, so that also impacts things like transportation services and so I think all these things, and we of course see a link here where that IoT can actually have a role to play in dealing with these macro trends from a transportation perspective. So all of these things made us choose this as a topic subject this time.
And looking at these challenges, I know you, Martin, already mentioned some of them. The question to you, Bengt, is what is the role that they will play in shaping urban mobility services?
Well, I think I like to continue on Martin's path here. We have a tough sort of economical climate, inflation, energy prices, war in Ukraine. So there is sort of a macro environment where companies, governments, authorities are cautious on how they will spend money. But at the same time, with increasing energy prices, it's very hard to run the business as you've been doing up until now. You need to look at how can I improve, how can I change, what can be different, and how can I serve my customers better. And I think on that point, I think we have this in the report. We have examples of interesting startups. We have many point solutions. We have many specific applications. But I don't think yet we see holistic, all-encompassing solutions, which takes maybe a commuter from A to B using various communications needs and serve them well in that fashion. So, tough climate where I think there is an opportunity to change business and do things differently.
Mm-hmm. And Martin, I know that you're very optimistic about the role that IoT will play, and in particular cellular connectivity. Why is that?
Well, I think that actually IT and M2M, even before that, over the last couple of decades, have proved itself to be able to optimize a lot of different verticals and end user experiences. So in that sense, I'm quite optimistic that it will continue, and there are still untapped potential, of course. So that's a good start. Then I think looking at specific verticals and IoT solutions, we've seen a lot of good examples where connectivity and the collection of data has been used to optimize a certain, maybe that's a bad expression, but silo experience. So say, I mean, you have a connected product, and that product somehow collects data and sends it up to the cloud or something, and you can add a new service or improve the user experience or lower your operational costs or something like that. So that's all good. But I also see that IoT as a concept have a bigger promise than that. And that is, of course, to connect even more devices, more different types of devices, different ecosystems, different players, and really make it the Internet of Things that the name suggests. And here, I think, looking at the report then and urban mobility, I think we have a good potential to actually see some good development in that, where we have a lot of different transportation means, different players, a lot of commuters and travelers, of course, and connecting all these things in a smart way, I believe have a good potential. And when it comes to cellular connectivity in particular, well, urban mobility obviously means that you are on the move, right? So having a technology then that can provide connectivity across a citywide area and do that without interruption is obviously a great start. So you're right, I'm optimistic.
Great to hear. And then if we look at more specifically some use cases, because you talk about micro-mobility, EV charging, public transportation, is that where you see the biggest potential for change within urban mobility? And can you also give some examples of companies that are leading the way already?
Sure. I think we do cover a few different aspects of urban mobility in the report. And for start, micro-mobility and the services with e-scooters and those type of players. I think IT is already well established from start. Actually, it's quite new concepts often and new players coming in, and they have utilized connectivity from the beginning to be able to track the location of the electric scooters for fleet management purposes, for theft prevention purposes, and all this. And here we have a lot of different players like Comodule, one of our customers from Estonia, doing this very efficiently for their customers. I'm sure that will continue. When it comes to public transportation, which is also mentioned in the report, I mean, for sure, M2M connectivity has been used for a long time in public transportation to monitor the state and health of the fleet, the buses and trains and what have you. But still, I'm sure there's a lot of untapped potential in this space, actually, to even further utilize IoT services to improve the user experience, the experience from the travelers and the commuters. We do have good examples of cities and municipalities having support applications that can tell you when the bus is arriving and so on. But I still think that there's very few places where we can see if the bus is full or not, and connect this to something that, as you mentioned, Bengt, takes us from A to B in a good manner. We do have some good examples of customers of ours, like Trafilog, a Danish company, who use a lot of sensors to monitor where we have traffic congestions and predicts arrival and departure times and stuff like that to really improve the experience. And this is something I think will continue to grow a lot going forward. But talking about potential, I think the EV charging infrastructure, that's really something which we see tremendous growth in right now. I think there will be even more innovation coming up, companies coming in and established one as well, improving this experience. We do to continue to push for the electricity tapping into the automotive industry, we do need to have even more infrastructure in place, expand that. We need to have predictability of availability and such services for the users. And obviously IT will come in play here. So this is something that I really see a good potentially. And we do know that within EU, for example, no more fossil fuel automotives should be sold after 2035. So there's really good momentum from the outside to continue to push this industry into electrification as well.
Good, thank you. And then a question to you, Bengt. From Accenture perspective, what are the challenges that you see, and then also what is important for IoT solutions to be successful and support the overall digitalization of services, both within urban mobility, which is today's topic, but also beyond across other industries?
So I think if I start in this end, I think Accenture did a survey a while ago when we looked at sort of investment climate attitude from management at companies globally, and I think we found out that in both in North America and the industrialized Asia Pacific, we have a pretty sort of optimistic view about the future, willingness to invest, while in Europe it was a bit more defensive, sort of keeping the lights on approach. And I think there is something very important in that, because with increasing energy prices, with inflation and with other turbulences we have, it's actually important to really have a new look, reinvent the business you are in. It will be absolutely required to have a prosperous future. You can look at the cinema industry, you can look at restaurants, and there are some of those businesses that are not surviving, while others are identifying new ways to run their business, to serve their customers in a better way than they've done before, but under this sort of new economical circumstances. So I think one of the messages we have is that, okay, it's turbulent times, but it's also times when you should reinvent and have a hard look at the way you run your business. Then I think connected to that, I think, and also to what Martin is saying here, it's very important to sort of have a data approach to when you reinvent your business. All successful companies, and it's really coming from the leading tech companies in the world, they have started many years ago of having an approach where they use data to drive and run their business. They use data to understand the customers and their needs better. And I think in many industries, a similar journey has to take place. So therefore, when you look at IoT solutions, IoT opportunities, it has to be with a data mindset. And also following on to what Martin is saying, that probably elevating the game a bit, not look at your specific solution that you are providing yourself, but look at how can that fit into an ecosystem of various services, where maybe I start my journey walking through, and I can choose different paths depending on what is the best from a weather perspective. Then when I come to the bus station, I'm served by the same app, but I get notice about which is the most effective bus to take today, depending on congestion, and maybe the final 500 meters with a e-scooter or something. And where are those available? Connecting all those dots together to an holistic service. I think that is one of a few of the key attributes for success.
And how do you see, Bengt, the role of regulation, both as a driver, sometimes as a constraint?
I think, yes, it's a good question, Galina. I think going back a few years, we were all super excited, super optimistic about how we could use data. And that is still relevant, but we have had regulation coming into place. We have cybersecurity, we have geopolitical conflict that is impacting the supply side, we have GDPR. So I think it's the same strategy, but it has to be more cautiously approached, and you have to make sure that you follow all the regulatory requirements that are in place. But I know I'm not saying that to say don't do it. I'm saying it, just be aware of the rules and regulation, how data can be used. Can data stay in, can data leave the country or can it not leave? Be just cautious on that approach. So there are some hurdles, which is sort of basically goes against the global cloud trend, you can say, where everything will be stored in one big cloud somewhere. It's much more localized trend now, but still very relevant as a trend and important to adhere to.
Mm-hmm. And then moving on with another question to you, Martin. In the report, you talk about the importance of collaboration between different actors in the ecosystem, both from technology to different providers of services, in order to enable a truly integrated service and experience for commuters. So can you elaborate on that? What does it take to achieve that type of partnership and collaboration across the ecosystem?
Yeah, it's a relevant question, and I think something that all enterprises that intend to do some kind of IT integration has to ask themselves, because I also think it's very hard to find examples of any player who on their own has managed to realize an end-to-end IT solution. It's typically involves a lot of different players, everything from hardware vendors, connectivity providers, application developers, even consultants actually. So I think we all need to realize this and collaborate. But looking at something like this, when we actually take the IT concept to test, and we aim to have a society where different players are connected, like you said, to understand if we can take the bus or not. I think, sure, the collaboration is going to be critical. You cannot do it on your own even. So someone needs to take the lead, of course, and I think that the question you had on regulation is interesting. Sometimes we have seen that regulation actually works as a promoter of IT development. We've seen it in the utility sector, where it's often have been from a regulator perspective to demand that the market can deliver 15 minutes reading from your electricity bill and so on. I think we have seen not many examples, but there are a few examples of this taking place in urban mobility as well. I know for in Helsinki, actually the Finnish has implemented a law that requires different transportation players in Helsinki to share information and integrate their services, just for the sake of having the ability to have the meta app that do the travel planning as you predict things, to be able to see if the combination of bus and e-scooter or whatever it is the best option for me to get from A to B. So here regulation in some sense actually works in favor of a development in this way, but it has to end up in a situation where you don't only look upon others as competitors. I mean, for sure there's a reason to see e-scooters as a competition to public bus transportation, for instance. But I also think that it's a possibility for collaboration. In fact, if the end game is a better user experience in terms of traveling, I'm sure there's an opportunity here as well to collaborate and make an even better service. And it requires only that a few players are willing to take those steps, and then suddenly you're falling behind if you don't do the same. So it's maybe more a matter of timing here, and if you want to be one of the forward-leading ones or not. Or it could be regulation that forces you into that direction. But at the end of the day, it's about creating value for the commuters in this case, as long as we're talking about our mobility. And I think that is something that you need to elaborate on yourself to see, what do you want to do? Do you want to be one of those players that enhance the experience or not?
Mm-hmm. Bengt, from Accenture's experience, do you have any good examples of industries or cases where this type of collaboration has taken place, and what has been the outcome?
Well, it's a good topic, and I think for me, it's the most important message to convey really is that basically our whole business is centered around, ecosystems and partnerships. I think about 40% or so of Accenture's revenue comes from partnership arrangements with various companies. And the reason is very simple. There is no single company that can design a smart container terminal or a smart factory or an electric vehicle, holistic solution. You need the hyperscalers, you need specialist companies, you need module players, you need cellular connectivity. So basically the reason why we are successful is because of managing ecosystems for different industries, where there's absolutely, collaboration, as you are alluding to, Martin, and that's what sort of form our role there is to orchestrate and to lead, but everyone is participating in a collaborative fashion and contributing their part to the overall solution, because that's when we talk with our industrial clients or enterprise clients, we don't talk about connectivity solution or a particular technical area. They are more interested in what's the outcome. Can you translate everything you are talking about now into what it means for the customer, measured in customer satisfaction, measured in output. So that's how we are looked at from our customer perspective, and that requires many different companies to achieve that. So for us, it's I would say it's almost very characteristic of how the enterprise market functions. And I think Martin and I have talked several times about this, how to bridge the gap, how to come even closer between cellular IoT solutions and companies of all kinds that are the front end and actually deliver and build the overall solution.
Mm-hmm.
And then, if I may add, I think innovation sometimes is driven by demand or requirements. Actually, it comes from other parts of the industry. And I think going back to the report, one of the concepts we're writing about is using the EV charging as some kind of demand response type of solution, where actually the network, the utility grids could be improved and peak shaved by the fact that you actually can select when during the 24-hour period you do charge your EV car. And I think we have seen, I think, attempts to achieve similar results in the past. There's been talks about connected dishwashers and washing machines and stuff like that could be run in certain hours. But I think the problem has been exactly this: to create the collaborative environment where these companies and enterprises are connected to the same smart grid. Being a little bit of the optimist again, maybe now the EV charging is actually something that has a big enough scale to make an impact on the grid, and there's opportunity here with increased prices of electricity and other things, that actually there's a business case even to do it that involves all the players. It's a business case for the end user because you can charge a car more cheaply, business case for the EV infrastructure provider, and business case for the utility company, and so on. So I think hopefully this is something that we will see materializing.
Mm-hmm. And another question to you, Martin: how do you see geographical differences playing a role here in the trends that you describe? Are you having more of a European perspective, or does this apply globally?
Yeah, I mean, Telenor IoT, of course, have a global perspective. We have our business spread out all over the world, and that makes us used to see differences for sure in maturity to adopt certain types of concepts and technologies. We know for a fact that the availability of 5G rollouts look very different depending on which market you look at right now, and also the need and demand. I mean, as a personal example, I was recently visiting Tokyo, which I think many recognize as a city where it's extremely accurate and timely in the train transportation system, and you're almost baffled how accurate it is. And I'm sure that that's part of delivered by IT solutions and sensors and in the network and so on. But then you have other markets in Asia where maybe the primary way of transporting things are by two-wheelers. different starting points, but I'm confident that the concepts of IoT are equally important, either for optimizing a train system or it's for optimizing the fleet management of these two-wheelers and making sure that they can get access and are available whenever they're needed and so on. And we see drivers of development in all these spaces actually. So yes, there's for sure differences from a geographical perspective and different starting points, but I don't see it as differences in adoption of IoT possibilities actually.
Thank you. And while I'm checking the questions we have received from the audience, any final thoughts or reflections from your side, Bengt?
I think that maybe I've almost touched it at least, but I come back to the whole concept of having a data-driven mindset when you reinvent your business, when you look at serving customer needs. I think when we look back, 15 years in time, and what has the leading tech companies in the world achieved? Well, they are all data-driven. They started their architecture were designed based on monetizing data, and they have been tremendously successful in that journey. We all know that. Now we need to take that experience to all industries, and so with a data-driven mindset. And on that, I think what has happened in the cellular industry over the last maybe 10 years, basically, we have had really, really good mobile broadband with 4G. Now we're getting 5G, but we should keep in mind that already on 4G level, we have a very, very solid and good technology. And the good thing when you have high capacity, high throughput, lower latency is that, well, then you can actually become a data-driven business. You have the transport mechanism, and you can put even more sensors at various places and collect and let that data run through the system, and then analyze and connect all your data scientists to predict and understand what's going on with your customers and with the market. So that data-driven mindset I would like to advocate. That is one of the key factors for success.
Good. Thank you very much. And with that, I think we're on the top of the hour and we will conclude this webinar. Thank you to all of you joining us online, and the webinar will be also available as a recording.
And the report is available for downloading.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If you want to read more. Thank you.
Thank you.